Welcome to the Sports Car Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Another great guest for you today. This one's just a little different. Today, I'm bringing on a show promoter from East Coast Collectibles Convention. Welcome, Scott Dimay. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, Ken. Great to see you today.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your day to hang out with me. I introduce you as a promoter, but I know you're, you've been in the hobby doing so much stuff as a collector and a vendor and so many other things. So I don't want to put it out there that you're only a promoter, just to get started.
No, I appreciate that, but obviously we know that the focus is to give a little bit of the background on the promotion side. But yeah, I mean the collection side, the relationships, the vendor side, it's all super important to me. I just know that this one is going to be more of a focus on, the promotion side to see kind of the behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So tell us, up front who Scott is, what your hobby journey looked like before you started promoting shows.
How far back do you want me to go? Do you want this to kind of like the Big Bang Theory, start like from the beginning, right? No, as a kid, my mom always had to make me clean up the cards because she ran an in-home daycare, and I couldn't have any of my stuff out because kids are 6 months old to 9 or 10, right, at a daycare. So the weekends, it was just living room, just cards everywhere, right? I would get bored one weekend of organizing by team, and I'd switch it to organizing it by player, and then go back to team or back to player, whatever, right? So that was like most of my childhood. Used to do my chores to get my $3 to $5 a week to go to Ames and buy 99-cent basketball victory packs, right? Back in, what is that, 98, 99 time frame. And that was really the ultimate beginning. What got me back into it is actually kind of a funny story that involves Mohan Sun and Walmart. I was on my way to Mohan Sun back in 2000 and late 16 or early 17 after the Pokemon Evolutions set dropped. And I happened to stop at Walmart to grab a pack of sports cards, and I don't remember what it was at this time, but also happened to see this like reprint of the original Pokemon cards because I was a Pokemon collector as a kid too, right? And I happened to pull a Charizard out of the reprint. I was like, this is awesome. So I started doing more research on like better sports cards and more Pokemon cards. So I really like kind of dropped out of it back in like the high school, college years of my age frame, and then got back in 2016, 2017, back when we can get Tatum boxes on the shelf and Mahomes boxes on the shelf, and no one even knew what Mahomes was going to be or cared what he was going to be,
Yeah. And you know what? You say that, it's funny you should say that, because me being, a Chiefs fan, it really, I was a Chiefs fan in my whole life. So, depressed most of it when it came to football, right? Because we were not a very good team. But then when all of a sudden we got Mahomes, right? We drafted him, and he sat on the bench the first year, but people really didn't know until he started, right, in 2018, until he came out, and all of a sudden he blew up. So all of a sudden, as a Chiefs fan, it was like being woken up from this long slumber, and trying to get the cards then, right? All of a sudden that one year, 2018, right into 2019, it was like all of a sudden you couldn't touch those cards, where the year before people were saying, oh, I was buying these RPAs for $100, so.
Oh, and I'm sure, like, if you think about just optic base or even just some of the prism bases, I mean, what was that same draft year, like Davis Webb or something like that for the Giants up here? So like, people were going after the Giants rookie, not this random Mahomes guy. And I guarantee you boxes of cards that we donated to local charities or just tossed out probably had base Mahomes rookies in them.
Yeah.
And then on the basketball side, I had an insane Tatum collection. They lost game 7 to the Cavs at home, and I sold the whole thing. So I was like, what's the point if we can't just win a game? That's the closeout game. Win it. Let's go.
Yeah. Now you're kicking yourself, right? It's funny this morning before I was getting ready for this, I was looking for some cards. I'm getting ready for the national, right? Getting out there to do the SoCo Expo out there. So I was going through and I had this one box of cards that's got like the Zach Wilsons and the Mac Jones and all those cards in it. And in fact, I'm just going to grab the card because it's right here. Still sitting on top, and it's funny you should say that. It's the Panini, the Don Russ Optic, Deshaun Watson, red yellow, PSA 10, right? And I'm like, oh, I forgot I had this card. I didn't even know. I just looked up the comps on this card. It's like $60. I'm like,
Yeah.
could you and compare this to the Mahomes? It's like $1,900, right?
Yeah,
And
I have a
if you remember back, this guy was all the rage that first year, right? And that 2017 when they put him in, he was all they figured he was going to be the guy, so.
Well, and not to get too far off track here, but you think about Mahomes sitting for a season, you think about Brady sitting for a season, right? And you look at how the hobby has such not just the hobby, but the teams have such a pressure on these rookie quarterbacks to be worth that contract right away. Purdy kind of picked up on his second season as well, right? Like I think the pressure is too strong towards these rookie quarterbacks from both the teams and the investment perspective of the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You have to think too, where someone at 19 or 20, where their body is developed to, right? Because you're continue to grow until you're 25, 26 years old, your brain and everything. So and it's a lot of guys, right? You start sustaining injuries early, you'll never rebound from that too. So there's a lot of guys that could have been great, but they got pushed into it, like you said, way too early, mentally or physically. They've been beat up and knocked out. Yeah. So what made you take that leap and starting your first show, and where was it? Just take me through that a little bit, where your first show was and what the idea was behind it.
Yeah, so actually this background is a pretty fun story. So for a little bit, you know how everyone always talks about repackers lately. So I did a repack product. It was I'm gonna sound a little biased here, but it was great. We would sell it to another breaker, and he actually sold at like $70 per team on baseball. So that's what, 2,100, there's 30 teams. He sold 9 cases of our product in one night. So it was like almost $18,000 of repacks in one night. So we were going around, whether it was the local shows, Shriners, whatever it was, we were going around to the shows. And I was like, this is kind of a fun atmosphere. And I didn't really know about like too many of the Connecticut ones until I went by, Enfield and Plainville, and I met Alex, so even my relationship with Alex was phenomenal, but it's short at this point, right? Before probably the 2021 timeframe, outside of what I call the peak of COVID, right? When shows kind of started back up, I never went to a show. I really didn't know they were even going on. I just had a very positive Facebook perception, reputation, everything, right? So almost all of my stuff was Facebook sales, Facebook related, Facebook breakers. And then we started going to the shows to kind of pick up inventory and everything. And I thought about it. I was like, this is kind of fun. Let's see what we could do down here, right? So my first show was actually over at Foxwoods, but it was at the Tanger Outlets. So the Tanger Outlets is technically a separate entity from Foxwoods on the legal side, but it's still within the Foxwoods building and footprint. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, what do people go to the mall to do? Shop. So if you add vendors into a mall, which I know there's other mall shows popping up again now, people are there to shop, right? They're not paying admission. They're just there to shop. So you have a Tom Brady card that, someone might comp, and it's like you have it out for $10, but, they're like a $5 card. Most shoppers, especially if they're Tom Brady fans, are just going to grab it. So our very first show was a wreck behind the scenes, but super successful, like day of, right? And I'm sure like Luke, who's Low Pop. I'm sure Luke, right? Luke has been a day one vendor since Foxwoods. you probably don't, you probably have seen him at our show, but Benny, who has all the pops in the corner over by the voice actors, he's been with us since Foxwoods, like 90% sure. And then Frank, who used to work for R&D, he was one of our like day one vendors, and John Panzini as well. I'm sure I'm potentially missing someone else, right? But at that show, there was a movie producer that is local in Connecticut here that was doing a documentary for Just Incredible. Now, for your wrestling fans out there, I don't know anything about wrestling. I apologize, but they were doing something about his life for Just Incredible at our event. If they ever put out that documentary, I think I'm in it somewhere. I just don't know if it's ever been put out or not. And we were talking at that show, me and the movie producer. He's like, hey, man, I'm friends with Kevin Nash. You know, I'd love to get Nash out to one of these. He's looking to meet more fans and do more of these events now that, you know, everything is kind of settling down in the world. I said, yeah, I'd love to bring out Kevin Nash. I don't know anything about wrestling, but I know that name.
Yeah.
So I sent him this was probably in, I want to say this was either June or July of 21. I don't remember the exact date, but it was somewhere in the summer. It may have even been early August, but either way, it was in the summer. And I sent him a text and, like, you know, thank him for his time, follow up with him. Never heard back from him. And then in November of 21, I get a call from him. Hey, I've got a contract with Kevin Nash up in Massachusetts on February 26th. Do you want half the contract? Because the other guy doesn't want to pay for the whole thing, but he would like him at his event. Yeah, sure. I'll take half the contract. He's like, do you have a card show set up that weekend? No, but I will. So I gave Mohegan Sun an email to try to find out how to book an event with them, and they responded. And my sales rep at the casino at the time, we did a walkthrough, and he was asking me all these questions and everything. And I don't know why, but they gave us a chance. Mohegan Sun does not give anyone an opportunity to really run events without having history. So I don't know if I just gave off the right perception. I don't know if the fact that we had a small one at Foxwoods helped. I don't know if it helped that I said that I was shopping them and Foxwoods to do it. So maybe they thought, you know, this would be a great thing. Yeah. What I do know as part of that conversation is he had been trying to get a card show to come to Mohegan Sun for years. And what I later found out from JPRS down in New York is when Mohegan Sun was building this part of the building, the expo center, the ballroom, everything on that side, right? The new hotel, they did a hard hat walkthrough of the expo center, and they were going to bring in this massive card show. David Ortiz, Derek Jeter, like you name it, they were going to be there. And I don't want to go into too much details of what they told me about, like why they didn't do it, but they didn't do it, right? Mm-hmm. So here
these are the guys that run like East Coast National and those shows down that way, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And they're great guys. You know, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I know, you know, Brian has reached out to me a few times to let me know that we've done a great job up here at the show. And for someone who's ran shows for as long as they have, it's nice to have that phone call, you know?
Yeah.
So we started our first show because I got a call about booking Kevin Nash, our first Mohegan Sun show, I should say. And that's how the first show started at Mohegan Sun.
And when was that, Scott?
That was February 26th and 27th of 22. So we are on our third calendar year.
All right. So and I think I was at that show. I think was I set up at your first show?
At this point, I don't remember. I don't to look back at all the paperwork would be the best way for me to exactly remember everyone who's there. But there are people that are like, dude, I've done your show since the very first one. I'm like, I love our relationships, but I barely remember who walked in the door for the first one. Because look at it from my perspective for that first one, right? If you've been to the show at all, we use the whole ballroom now. But the first one, we only used the left half of the ballroom. And between the two entrance doors, there's a divider that goes right down it and divides it, right? We only sold 60 out of 100 tables because every local show, $40 tables, $60 tables, right? We were $250 for a 6-foot table. It took a lot of trust to get people to do that first show. Yeah. So we only sold 60 out of 100 tables. And we took to sometimes I hate getting into the business side of these things, right? Because everyone knows when you talk to me, I truly care about our vendors and our attendees, right? But we took a massive loss to run that first show, and we ended up having 1,300 people come through the doors for the first show with zero show running experience, right? I don't consider the one at Foxwoods experience in a positive way because of what happened behind the scenes, right? But I guess you could take positive out of everything. But I would still say zero experience of running a show. We had 1,300 people come through. I'm not a marketer until I had a recent marketing job with Webster Bank, right? I'm not a marketer. I just am a relationship person. And we had 1,300 people come through in 2 days for 60 vendors. So that's when the hype just went right through the roof.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I know I don't remember if it was that particular show, but I remember my first show I set up there. I set up next to I met Joe. I was set up.
Okay, so you were at the second show was June because Joe set up for the first time at that show as well.
Okay. All
so
right.
that
So
was
that must have been the second show. Yeah.
So for full transparency, since we're having the promoter conversation here, if anyone, I try to block June of 22 out of my head. That is the one that gives me the most anxiety looking back at. That's the one that was really like the turning point. So here's what happened behind the scenes is the casino didn't want us for more than one show a year. Not because we did anything wrong, but because the bridal expo is once a year, the cannabis expo is once a year, the boat expo is once a year, right? All these things are just once a year. So they weren't ready for an event to be multiple times because their reputation and how we present their reputation and how successful we are with their reputation is just as important as our reputation. Because if I failed out as a promoter and you were a promoter and they call you, they're going to say, well, what happened? You're going to say, what happened to Scott? Right now, they got to figure that out in order to get you through the doors. So I had to explain to them, like, this is like a 24/7 stock market, right? This hobby does not sleep. And that's how we got the second show booked. On the second show, I never wanted to expand that fast from the success of the first show, right? We got our 100 tables sold out real fast. Wasn't an issue at all. And then we had this wait list building up. And then we had, I can't quite remember exactly who was like the tipping point on the wait list, but we had some like respectful, like let's just say it was you and Joe as an example, right? Respectful names joined the wait list from like, maybe I need to try this. Maybe I need to try to open this up. And it was not the best decision to open it up to the full ballroom the way that I did, right? You talk to a lot of businesses from 22 and March to August, maybe September was a horrible year for a lot of people on the actual like business front out there. So we expand from 60 vendors to 133 vendors, vendor tables, right? For the second show, running off the success from the first one, I had people who did extremely well at that show, but the foot traffic was light. It was maybe half of the first show. So you double the vendor tables, but have half the foot traffic. It's not a good combination, right?
Yeah.
So I was a little bummed out about that. I took that. I shouldn't say a little. I was very, because I take this to heart for how many people show up and have fun and how many vendors are trusting us to put on a great event, right? And I was going to wait until 23 to run the next show. And then my phone rang from the casino. I'm like, hey, what's up? It's like, you want to try something? It's like, I don't know, but I'll hear you out. I've got a basketball tournament every November ran by the Hall of Fame. College in the arena, 8 to 12 basketball courts in the Expo Center, kids, families, sports fans walking by your event all day long. Can you set up in November with us? And I'm like, what are the dates? 19th and 20th. I'm like, man, that's my son's first birthday. Like, I can't do that. It's like, but for the growth of our event, I can't not try that either, right? Because to me, family is absolutely first.
Yeah.
And that was the tipping point in a positive way for the history of what has become our show at this point, right? The first show was great with 60 vendors and 1,300 people. The second show, I saw guys who did like $30,000, $40,000 at the second show in sales, but overall, the lighter foot traffic did not look good. And then the third show, we broke like 2,000 people with the same 133 vendors. We had some pretty good autograph guests on both sides, on the anime and the sports, right? The anime guests that we had really picked up that side of it to draw the fans out for the trading card side. And that was like the tipping point to say, we've got this, right? We took what should be a typical 5-year plan for most businesses to be successful. And 9 months in, we hit that recipe of success quickly. And I'm grateful for it. I don't know how many times I've told people that I never expected to get to this point on a silly idea of taking that Kevin Nash contract and turning it into a show. So I can never explain to anyone how grateful I am that we've gotten to this point as an event for so many people to enjoy the experience.
So I know there's, a lot of, overhead. There's a lot of costs getting in and doing everything you do. But if you were to take the money factor out of it, right, to cover all that, what are kind of the most important things as a promoter that you're considering when you're setting up a show?
So someone asked me this exact question yesterday at the show I was at yesterday, where they aren't even, I don't think they're a vendor. I think that they were just a customer walking around. They've watched our Instagram stories and everything, and they just had an honest question around the same thing. What I think most people forget on the promoter side, for the couple shows that we've seen fizzle out, you as the vendor is the number one customer in planning the event, right? Most promoters forget, when you take out all the money, take out anything, expenses, income, whatever, take that all out. The vendor is the number one customer in planning the event. Am I doing you the best service I can with developing the event, marketing, location, getting out there and being the face of it, right? You are the number one customer right up until the event day.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because I was going to kind of lay into that, is where the vendors, right, are your customers, and me as a vendor, when I show up, the people that come through are my customers, right, or other vendors, can be mine. So when it comes to the vendors now, your customers, the vendors that are doing that, what are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to vendors? When you're, because I know you're now, fast forward to now, I know you're sold out. You have waiting lists for every single show, which is, not a bad problem to have, honestly, when it comes to being, because it's almost like saying, so me being, I set up as a vendor, it's like saying that I'm selling every card in my case, every show, right? Wouldn't be a bad thing to happen. So as a promoter, like, what are some of the challenges you have with us as vendors?
Not reading our emails. We don't put the time into sending out the email just for fun, right? If we want to send out emails for fun, most of those are going to the attendees as a reminder that we're coming, right? And a lot of times, attendees who are listening, those emails are really just top of mind reminder. Don't forget the event's coming, right? Of course, there's good stuff in those emails. Who are the vendors that are coming and all that stuff, right? But at the end of the day, the attendee emails are really just a reminder of, don't forget about the event coming up. Vendor emails and everything else like that are like, what we put in it is important for most of you, all of you, to read, because it's about parking situations. It's about the best access to the show hours, setup times, stop being late, please. Things like that. And it's like, to take the time and answer those questions that are in the email that we've sent 6 times is a little frustrating, right? Like, that's really the biggest challenge. And while your question was definitely draws a negative response from me around that, right? Because that is the truth, right? Asking about the challenge of dealing with debt with vendors is going to draw a negative response. I would like to also backtrack a little bit and say, we have a great group of vendors. There are a few that will still message, email, ask questions, like, and you're like, it's in the email, right? Like, and it's not a question like where to park. At this point as a vendor, unless you're a brand new vendor that got added in, winter parking lot. Everyone should know that from 8 shows worth of emails, right? So a current vendor who's been with us 4 times shouldn't still ask me where parking is or what time setup is when we're very consistent on that information.
Mm-hmm. And I know now that you say that, now that all these, what was it, 8 times, and I think I just saw, because I read the email, that there's the next show that I just signed up for, right? There's a little bit of a different load in now, right? There's going to be a loading dock or something. So,
well, that's the information we're going to have to heavily put out is that it's at a different ballroom altogether on a different side of the casino, right? So we're going to have to now look at our day of signage within the casino and put something at the old ballroom to say, thanks for coming to our show. We're not over here today. Right. Like, and then the loading dock area is amazing, right? Think about how long that walk is from the winter parking lot for you guys. The loading dock, I don't know if you watched the whole live video that I did announcing the September show, it's like a 50-foot walk.
Oh, that's
right.
nice. And you know what? It's not even the walk on the other one. It was the elevator. You know,
Well,
it
and
was
that's why we
like,
put out all the information and stop parking in the parking garage, right? If you want to leave your car in the garage for the weekend, that's great. But don't load and unload from inside the garage when you can walk on the main floor and save all that elevator time, waiting, and
yeah,
effort. So that was a learning curve for us from the very first show. Is I went back through there. I was like, well, wait a minute. Even we were parked up in the garage. This is a pain in the butt to wait, especially when concert traffic is coming in on that Sunday afternoon. It's already hard enough to walk through there, never mind waiting for the elevator. So
yeah,
anyone that parks, we put out all the information to make sure that you try to park in the parking lot or the, like, next to the elevator. There is a door into the bottom floor of the garage. You could pull your cars up in there, and do a load in, load out in there, and then go park somewhere else. And which
yeah,
also helps with the elements too on a bad day, right?
yeah. So, the show has always been combined with sports and Pokemon. Moving to the new location, more tables, same amount of tables.
I think I'm waiting for that final floor plan still. So the current ballroom we use is about 18,000 square feet. The next one is 40,000 square feet, but we're not using the entire 40,000. We're probably using about 20,000 of it, right? We're going to cut it in half. This preview show is really just to show the location of it, not really the whole thing, right? I wouldn't want to increase to a 300 table show for a 1-day, one-off situation and then try to figure out who to cut of those 300 tables to go back to 170 for the November show that's still at the Earth Ballroom, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So we're only using half of the ballroom. So it's going to be slightly bigger. I would say maybe a 15 to 25 table increase, maybe 30. But I don't want to go too big on the 1 day on the table side and then have to just cut people out after that. So that's where I'm looking at it from a relationship perspective, to maybe let an extra 10 or 15 people in, but let them know, like, this is a one-off right now. You're still on the waiting list for the future shows until we expand to the $40,000, 40. I wish it was 40,000. That's 40,000 square foot side.
yeah, yeah. And I would have to imagine too, and a lot of people, and I'm a vendor, and you hear a lot of people say this, and sitting here talking to you, it makes a little bit more sense. Why not split it into 2 shows, right? One Pokemon show, one sports card show. But if you're doing this twice a year now, right, and even going 2-day shows and a 1-day show, how many more shows could you like really get in there, and would it make sense? Would you continue to bring all these people in, if you continue to add more shows at the same venue in the same,
So someone commented on Instagram that we should split it because we would make more revenue. And first of all, that's not the right answer. Splitting something up for more revenue is a totally backward focus compared to what we've put into this event, right? We already run 3 times a year as it is, with February, June, and November. Adding September is a 4th time for the year. I'm already trying to get dates booked in 2025 and 2026 with the casino because we aren't the only event that they host.
Mm,
And the only reason why the one day pop up at the new ballroom is over at the new ballroom is because we asked about the availability at the Earth Ballroom and it's already booked. So now we've got an awesome opportunity to show everyone the new ballroom, the new side as a one day one off when our ballroom was already booked, right?
mm,
As soon as I've said this from day one, for the long running shows out there, whether it's JPRS or Dedham up in Mass with Doug Keating, right? Those heavy sports focused shows are successful because of how long they've been running. I don't think a new show can pop up as sports only and have the same, especially at a venue like Mohegan, where up at Dedham and those hotels, they're like $3 for admission, right? We're 15. I don't see us having the same success as a sports only show at all.
mhm,
The
mhm.
What you lose is the family atmosphere of everyone collects a little bit of everything, right? We have some dealers, especially some of our bigger shops that join us that do both sports and trading cards. So now they have to decide what they leave at the shop, what they bring with them instead of just bringing both.
Mhm.
And then from a vendor perspective, again, talking strictly business on this, not relationships, not caring, right? If you have a 200 table show and 100 of them are sports and 100 of them are Pokemon or TCG in general, you now have half the competition for the foot traffic walking around, right? So I just think that if we were to, we would never split it, but if we were to, I just think that we are going to do a disservice to everyone who enjoys multiple assets of their collections in general by cutting out an entire topic.
Yeah. And you know what? As a vendor, it's less competition, right? And when you really think about it, and I think people say, "Oh, we should do just all sports." Those are the people that are on the waiting list and never end up with a table, right? Because they're thinking, "Well, if we could get rid of these Pokemon people," and the Pokemon people are saying, "If we can get rid of these sports people, I could have, I could have get a table here and set up." So, and I think when you really think about it from a vendor point of view, you may say what you want, but there's probably a percentage, and you can tell me if there's probably maybe a 10 to 20% of people who do both, right? Who do Pokemon and do sports cards. So for those people, they're getting to come in and do both. But as far as a vendor, right? I mean, it's just less competition. There's going to if there's 200 tables and 100 are sports. Well, there's 100 tables of people I don't have to worry about to have the same card as I have in my case, and I have to compete with price against them.
Correct.
Yeah. What percentage would you think of people who do both? Who would do both Pokemon? Any idea? I mean, I know I'm putting
I
you on
think
the
your
spot.
example was probably right, probably like 10, 15% at most.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge overlap, but overall in the room, I would say going off of that overlap, you probably have a 70% sports and 55% Pokemon. The
Mm,
biggest thing that I've said to multiple people when you walk in the room is a visual, right? The visual is how many sports dealers put up a banner for their business?
mhm.
5%
Yeah.
less, right?
Yeah.
How many Pokemon vendors put up a banner for their business? Probably 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
So when you walk into the room and you're seeing these big banners, logos, the guy that has the Pikachu balloons up in the air, right? You're seeing a Pokemon visual, but it's because the sports side doesn't do the same self marketing as vendors.
Mm, mm. And how many sports collectors show up dressed as their favorite athlete
Throwing on
versus
a jersey during football season, right?
right, versus the Pokemon people? It's great to see them all coming in their costumes and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which I've had a lot of people ask about the cosplay side, and I encourage anyone who is looking to meet one of our voice actors to be comfortable to wear cosplay and enjoy that experience of meeting the person. But I will not ever have any type of cosplay contest or any type of thing to really push a cosplay side. I think I think the cosplay side, when we have 3,200 people walk through back in February, I think is like less than 1%, right? That will come in dressed up to meet someone that we have there. So to me, it's not a focus for us, and I do believe that the of the other 99% of people that are walking through, we have a heavy portion of collectors that are looking to find their favorite player, their favorite TCG card, their favorite something, right? I do think that we have done very well marketing and um, attracting more collectors than like dealers who didn't have a table set up.
Mhm. And I know I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of work just to prepare. I mean, from the moment you announce a show, all the work in between, from that point to the day of the show. So, I mean, a 1-day show versus a 2-day show, I would imagine it's all the same amount of work, right?
Yes.
For there's not a lot, there's not a lot of difference between a 1 and 2 day show versus, I guess, first, like overnight security and being there for a second day. Um,
That's the only difference. The only difference is we're there for an extra 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is on day two, right?
yeah.
Otherwise, all the efforts are identical. I'd say at a 1 day, just if we're going to talk about like the business cost perspective for a second, on a 1 day, I probably put in 80% into radio ads instead of 100% like the 2 day.
Mhm.
But even then, I'm too nervous to adjust that too much as well, because whether it's a 1 day or 2 day, you guys deserve the same show.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you exclusive to Mohegan? I mean, have you ever thought about, branching out and doing anything anywhere else, or are you completely committed to staying with Mohegan and doing all the shows there?
Kind of both. So we are obviously having very good success with our partnership with Mohegan Sun. Whether it's the staff, because another, when we're going back to like the customer factor, right? Like, you guys as vendors are my number one customer right up until the show. Attendees are also our customer, to make sure that the day of goes smooth for them and for you guys, right?
Mhm.
But Mohegan Sun's staff, who we hire, while we're technically like their customer for that weekend, in reality, they are just as much our customer as well, for their brand, their perception, and especially with security. If we were an event that treated them like crap, you think they're going to want to sign up for that shift? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we treat them so well that they actually beg, like they fight over our event. I don't want to use beg in a weird way, right? They fight over setting up or being the security guy at our event, because they know that it's going to be a respected, easy event to work with.
Mhm.
So that's the reason why I've always loved kind of staying with Mohegan. I've got my eye on a couple other things. I'm going to try to say this without any. I don't want anyone to think that I have bias or ego in this next comment. I've had a few people say, "Well, why not run like a couple one-off shows, like at another hotel or VFW or something like that?" Right? I feel like all we would do is hurt our main shows to do that, because the perception is going to be that the quality of those shows has to be the exact same as if we were operating at Mohegan Sun.
Mhm.
So if the quality isn't the same as operating at Mohegan Sun, because we choose a local hotel on an off month
Mhm.
from Mohegan, and then there starts to be a negative perception that can then hurt the next Mohegan location show, we're just looking at a spiral down effect, in my opinion. I've had a couple opportunities to be at similar level quality venues as Mohegan, and when the time is right, we'll look at executing on looking at those completely. But in the meantime, it's definitely just look forward to Mohegan Sun being our home.
Yeah. And I create content around shows. I go to shows every single weekend. It's like I very rarely miss shows on the weekend, and I talk about shows when I go to new shows and even older shows. And I put a lot of description into, and if I see something I don't like, and it's just my own opinion, like, if I'm at a show and the music's too loud, or if I'm at a show and the lighting is terrible, or it was difficult to get there, or there was no parking, or, just anything like that. So, and I put that stuff out there, and there's always good with the bad. But I do have to say, I mean, come to the Mohegan show, there's really nothing, there's no down part about any part of that about the ballrooms. I mean, the lighting's good, the temperature is, it's always, it's always nice and cool in there. They got great bathrooms, like, right there, located right, so there's so many positive things. And if you wanted to get something to eat, right, I mean, you've got tons of restaurants out there that you can go get food from any one of those. My only downfall, right, for Mohegan is I used to frequent Mohegan on a monthly basis before I, got back into the hobby. And I have to convince myself when I go, that I'm coming, and it's work. I'm coming to put the work in. I'm not coming to go to the tables and play. I have to keep myself, like, keep that separate. Like, I'll go and I'll play up there, but I definitely keep it separate when I'm coming. And people around me, they're amazed. Even my wife, I come home, she's like, "Oh, I was did you play?" No, I didn't, and she's surprised. But I'm like, I really have to keep it separate. I do the show. I go, Michael Jordan's. I have a nice dinner. There's a lot of things I like to do there, but when it comes to the gambling aspect, and I know a lot of people do, they love it. I mean, it's like I'm coming to set up at the show, but you know, I I got to get down to those tables by 6 or 6:30 or whenever this thing closes. I'm kind of complete opposite. I like to keep that separate. But again, it's a great location. I think you've done very well over there, and it's nice to see your success, right? I mean, even more. I mean, it's frustrating for some, but to be sold out and waiting lists on every show just says a lot to what you're doing over there.
Well, and I'll piggyback on a couple things there, right? So first, to go back to like the hotel VFW thing, I have full respect, as you know, for the guys that run great shows at those venues. So I wasn't saying that in any type of negative way. I just think that people have a perception of what they expect walking to our show, right? So I'd rather keep Mohegan the home there. On the gambling front, another vendor actually said that yesterday. He said, does the gaming side like comp you at all for the amount of people you bring in that actually like lose money there? And I was like, no, but I bet you if we ran the numbers for the weekend, I gave everyone's player cards to them, I bet you we could probably get some good stuff comped for me, for the amount of players that we bring in. So yeah, it was definitely funny on that aspect there. I forget what the last thing you had just said that I was going to piggyback on. What did you say at the end of?
Just having all the tables sold out, have
Oh yeah,
waiting lists. Yeah.
thank you. So the number one comment that I get is if you have such a large waiting list, just rent more space. And here's where, again, this is strictly business talk and not the relationship side. But if I just wanted to just do more space and charge for tables and have more tables and everything, I can. We use the smallest ballroom in the casino. It's 18,000 square feet. The next one's 40, and the Expo Center is 100 or 120,000 square feet. I could put over 1,000 tables in the Expo Center tomorrow if I wanted to. But where's the foot traffic coming from to support 1,000 tables? Where's the collectors coming from to support 1,000 tables just because you're on a wait list and you selfishly want to get in? Or my favorite comment is, yeah, but I got nice stuff. Okay. So I appreciate that. But you just questioned me on my other 100 on any given show. We have 172 tables, but we have roughly 95 to 115 different vendors, right? As an average, just to show you guys how many people get multiple tables and things, right? So you're assuming the other 100 vendors in there don't have nice things then by saying that comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be straight up honest and say that if your first comment is, but my stuff is nice, you're assuming that the other people don't have nice stuff too.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny you should say that. There was just a comment a few episodes ago where somebody said, "Oh, inventory is not, worthy of the national," right? And it's kind of the similar comment there where someone says, "Hey, you know what? I've got, you know, $200,000 or $1 million worth of inventory. My stuff is so much better than everybody else's, right? But not everybody's coming in to buy, $30,000 cards or $20,000 cards. And really the norm, more cards are bought out of singles boxes, at any given sports show, which could be from 25 cents, up, versus cards that are coming slabbed out of a case.
Right.
So yeah, you can never say my stuff is better than anybody else's stuff. Get on the waiting list and hope your name gets pulled.
Well, and then I also get, especially for people that have never even been to our show, but they hear about it and then they join the wait list. I get messages like, what do I have to do to bribe you to get in here? What do I have to do to get in? Like my stuff is better, or I'm going to be one of the best vendors you've ever met, and all this stuff. And it's like, again, you're questioning my other, 90 to 115 steady vendors who have trusted us from day one. Yeah. And then I've actually gotten bribed. I had $1,000 bribe for the February show to add a table for someone. And I said, where do you want me to put it? You want to put it outside? Because I don't have any more space for another table. Your bribe means nothing. I'm not kicking someone out for $1,000. That makes no sense.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the money. It's about the respect. From day one, what I have done differently than other shows that I'm aware of, that have also popped up kind of in the same time frame, is you cannot go to my website and buy a table. Why? Because you guys, as current successful vendors with us, deserve the opportunity to join the next show each and every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
what happens is you tell this guy, okay, yeah, $1,000, and then you tell me, oh, sorry, Ken, we ran out of tables. I have to push you back to the waiting list, right? And then I'm like, okay, Scott kicked me out for somebody else's better, so maybe I just won't do that anymore. And then the next show, the $1,000 guy says, yeah, I'm not going to do that either. And there may be somebody to take that table, but if it happens enough times, you'll start losing your customers, which are the people buying the tables.
The number one perception that ends up failing the other shows out there that we are all aware of is backdoor deals, backdoor discounts, taking bribes like that, right? Mm-hmm. You just got to be transparent with people. At the end of the day, I would love to be able to support 1,000 vendor tables and clear out the wait list, right? Because our wait list is over 300 tables right now, right? We started with 60 tables. Our current show is 172, and I have a 300 table wait list and more added all the time, especially as we meet more people and everything, right? But why should any show that's established be a free-for-all for purchasing tables? That's just an absolute disrespect, slap in the face to you guys as vendors who helped get it to this point. Mm-hmm. Yes, from the top down, right? Maybe top down is the wrong word, but you'll understand what I mean as I say this. All the effort that Nicole and I put into this event is the most important part. And then your trust of us putting in this effort and making sure that you guys have your space each and every event is the next part of that puzzle, right? Why would I let that puzzle fall apart by sending out an email that's free for all to purchase tables, and someone we've never met purchases a table, even though they've been on the wait list for a year and a half, versus the vendors who have helped to grow the event by being respectful to people, by being great people, having inventory of all different kinds. Why should you guys get removed for someone else because we put a link out there for people just to buy tables? Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be a first come, first serve thing. It should be showing respect to the people that have trusted us from day one, day two, throughout the process, right? That's how I think it is. And that's what's kept us with very good relationships and successful.
Yeah. I was going to ask you one more question. I don't know how aware you are with what they did this year with the national, with the tables, where they took all those tables away, right? They said, well, if you own it, it's just you and one other whoever the other name is on it, and that's it. Nobody else is allowed in there. No more, subletting. What is your opinion? Do you think what they're doing that's something they should have done? Do you think that it's if they've bought the space, they can do what they want from a vendor's point of view or your point of view? Any comment? How you feel about that?
I think timing of that was horrendous, right? As a negative for the hobby in general. Um, you have guys and ladies, right? I tend to use the term guys as everyone in general, but it's not gender specific, right? We have some amazing vendors that are also women out there. So we have vendors in general who have stocked up all year to provide for their table space at the National like they do every year. If this is something that they wanted to roll back a little bit on, the timing was immaculately wrong for everyone that has put the investment into bringing inventory to the National. Mm-hmm. I understand that at some point you have to have control over certain things with the show for the protection of the show and everything, but the timing of it was just, this could have been talked about to vendors at check-in to say, hey guys, listen, you own 3 booths this year. We know you don't personally have the inventory for 3 booths. We know you're subletting to other people. All right. That's changing for next year. So start right now planning. And then how do they determine who's purchasing those booths, right? We know that friends have subletted space to each other for 30 years that now, do they get that space next year as an example, right? Or how is that attrition going to work on that aspect? So I don't know what they were thinking when they made that decision, but I heavily disagree with the timing of it and the severity of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I fully support shows popping up on purpose against the National that particular weekend. If I could put on a show here for you guys that was 1,000 tables and just draw all the attention away from the National, I would totally do it. I think a big company like Burbank or someone else who already has that potential exposure should absolutely pop it up. Because here's the thing that everyone keeps saying, whether you're talking about Dallas, Burbank, East Coast National, right? Some of these bigger, well-established shows, some people said, well, Scott, why would you ever run against a Dallas, right? When they were talking about another event up here that ran against Dallas, I'm like, I'm a vendor. I don't travel, right? As a customer, I'm not traveling to Dallas. So the customer bases of the regions of the country still deserve great shows in those regions. We put this such a big perception on some of these other events that, are they great events? Absolutely. But from a dealer perspective, do they really deserve that heightened focus when you still have all your friends and attendees and customers in these areas that don't travel to those?
Yeah. So that was a perfect segue into the next question I have for you is, in August, right? We have East Coast National, we have the Fanatics thing in New York City, and Fishtown in Philadelphia, right? So you have these 3 big shows, 2-day shows, all on the same weekend. So Fanatics and East Coast are like they're both in New York. I mean, they're
like
probably
15 minutes away.
Yeah. And then Philly is probably just within a couple hours, right?
Correct.
When it comes to the planning of major shows, these are all 3 major shows, big shows,
Yep.
Hundreds of tables in all 3. What are your from a promoter's point of view? Like I know for me as a vendor, it's like, okay, now I have to make a choice. Do I want to set up here, or there, right? And you would think that like these guys just could have gotten together and said, hey, you do this weekend, I'll do this weekend, and you take that weekend, right? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've seen it happen here just in New England, right? Where I've said multiple times, I wish all the promoters would just sit down, talk about dates, hash it out for the greater good of everybody, and we could grow this entire area together. But since no one wants to do that, I'm not surprised that the big guys don't want to do that either, because at the end of the day, I was very grateful until I got laid off last month that this was never a primary focus of income for us, right? So as I look for another job or opportunity or whatever's next on my horizon, I'm still going to give you guys the same event every single time, regardless of what's happening in my personal life. Because I always told people, while we couldn't afford to lose as much money as we did on the first couple shows, we did lose it, right? But it didn't change my personality of how we treat you guys. I absolutely, from the growth of the first show to the low second show to the high third show, changed style for the better of you guys, right? But if it's going to put food on my table for my kids, then yeah, I kind of need to be a little bit different, right? So I've always had that perception and positivity of having a day job where it was like, we're not going to change our style because I have to put food on the table this week in order to get more people through the doors or charge more for vendor tables or whatever. So if all of us in this area up here couldn't even sit down and have a talk, why would the biggest three guys in New York and Philly talk, right? I think that it's for the region right there. I still think that there's enough foot traffic, enough attendees in the New York and Philly area to where East Coast National and Philly probably could have ran at the same time, right? You're still doing a slight disservice to vendors, your primary customer of where to go. You're definitely doing a disservice based on the autograph guests for autograph fans of which one to go to, right? What throws the biggest wrench into that one for me is the Fanatics Fest. Not only is the cost of their tables insane, I don't even know what to expect of that first time event, right? Because Fanatics Fest is more like to me, from all the marketing, it's more like a meet and greet for Tom Brady, for Derek Jeter, for Sabrina, right? Hulk Hogan, everyone else they have going there. So where's the marketing that it's actually a card show as well?
Yeah, and
right.
the table's insanely priced.
3,500 for 3 tables with 10 showcases, and that's it. I mean, that's $1,200 a table, just under. One vendor that I talked to yesterday who is doing Fanatics Fest did give an opposite perception and said, but listen, if these events do pop off, I want to be at the first one, knowing that they'll always let me into more, right? So that was a perception I didn't think of, but I still feel like the average attendee paying $60 a day to go there is already 4 times more than the East Coast National, I assume 4 times more than Philly. It's 4 times more than us. And I had people that minimal, but I had people that got upset that we went from $10 to $15, right? And now you're going to go to a Fanatics event, basically paying the big company like Walmart all this money to go to their event because you think you're going to meet Tom Brady for free, and it's not going to happen. So are those people really going there to spend at your tables that you're paying $3,500 for? I'm not in any way, shape, or form sitting here trying to bash Fanatics. I think that so New York Comic Con runs at the same Javits Center. It's a 5 million square foot building, and New York Comic Con gets almost 300,000 people through the doors in 4 days at $150 an average ticket, right? So like they've already established that New York can be a huge zone for this type of event. I think the weekend could have been chosen better, especially when you have the other 2 very well established shows within a 3-hour radius at most. I think Philly to New York without traffic is probably 2.5. I could be wrong, right? Yep. So I think timing could have absolutely been better.
Yeah. And you know what? And on the opposite side, it opened up, so there was a wait list, for the Fishtown show. So now that opened up because people have to decide, right? They have to decide: am I going to set up at East Coast National? Am I going to go there? So I knew that opened up a door for me to get a spot down there. I figured if I'm going to set up anywhere, I'd rather be at the furthest point away and not the crosstown competition. And the other thing I'll comment on New York, I mean, it's for no matter where you're coming from, it's not cheap to get there. It's not cheap to transportation or to drive and to park and to things like that. And it's not easy. You're coming into the city to do it. So there's a
Correct.
lot of, I mean, a lot of people get excited about going into the city, but I on the opposite side, I think if you're coming from out, and there's a lot of other things to think of, and not just.
Now, as a positive for how close those two are, maybe the Fanatics event is going to be a huge draw compared to what we think, even with those costs and expenses, right? And maybe those people have never been to the East Coast National, and they drive down the East Coast National the next day.
Yeah.
Make it a 2 for weekend, right? So there could be a bigger picture positive here that we're not necessarily considering, but I think you're making the right move to be at the farthest away show. I think that Philly and the surrounding area of Pennsylvania has more than enough foot traffic to still make that show great. And I think you're making the right choice to go to the farther one.
Yeah. Well, I know too. You're leading into the why is there always a McDonald's across the street from Burger King, right?
Almost.
Yeah. Just close enough. So you've got options. Oh man, Scott, I really appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun. Tell everybody where they can reach out to you if they have any questions, if they want to sign up or get on a wait list for one of the Mohegan shows, or just get on the your email list for the Mohegan
definitely.
shows.
So we made this as easy as possible for everybody. So it's at EC3Con. So it's EC the number 3CON. That's our website, ec3con.com. That's our at on Facebook, our at on Instagram. I do have YouTube and a little bit of TikTok, but haven't really pushed those too much. And yeah, we love to connect with everyone. I'm very responsive, I promise.
Excellent. Okay, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe, and most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it.